Chapter 11, Maria Teresa, Part 3, pages 247 through 256. Sunday night, July 10th. Mama sent us a flashlight. No OAS yet, but lots more rumors. The beginning of last week, everyone thought that they'd be here by the end of the week. But now the rumor is they're waiting to see if the Bentoncourt will live. Also, they're working out how they'll conduct their investigations. Just lock them in here with us, Sina says. We'll give them an earful. Yes, Dinora says. You girls give them an earful and the rest of us will give them something else. Everybody bursts out laughing. We've talked openly about it, and I can't say I really miss it, but some of the girls are ready to scream. They want a man, so... And I should add that it's not just the dubious ladies saying this. Minerva is the biggest surprise of all. These girls can be so vulgar. Lord, in 6 months my ears have heard what they haven't known about in 24 years. For instance, the girls have an elaborate system of body clues by which they can tell what kind of man you're suited for. Say your thumb is fat and kind of short, then you're bound to like a man with a similar endowment elsewhere. I happen to have a short but slender thumb, and that proves I'm really compatible with a short, slender man with average endowments. Phew! Some of these girls are sleeping together, I know. That's the only thing that Santiclo won't allow. He says it's just not right. Once a woman is with a woman, she's ruined for a man. I myself had a close encounter that turned out to be all right, with Magdalena and the other night after our talk. Valentina just went by on her sneaky feet. I just better put this away and not try the devil twice. To be continued. Monday afternoon, July 11th, quiet time. I mentioned the close encounter I had with Magdalena. This is what happened. She was visiting over here one night, and we got to talking about ourselves, and finally she told me her whole life story. I'll say this. It's enough to break my heart. I've been going around for months thinking no one has suffered like I have. Well, I'm wrong. Magdalena has taught me more about how privileged I really am than all of Minerva's lectures about class. When Magdalena was 13, her mother died, and she didn't have any place to go, so she took a job as a maid for a rich, important family, the De La Torres, real snobs. Night after night, she was used by the young man of the house. She said she never reported it to her mistress, since she thought it was part of her job. When she got pregnant, she did go to the Doña, who accused her of being an ungrateful, lying whore, and threw her out into the street. Magdalena gave birth to a baby girl, Amantina, and for years they lived hand to mouth. Magdalena says the trash heap near the old airport was their bodega, and their home an abandoned shed near the runway. Pobrecitas, I kept saying. At some point, the De La Torres must have caught sight of the blonde-headed, hazel-eyed little girl. They decided that she was related to their son. They drove over to the new house where Magdalena was working and took the poor screaming child away. Tears brimmed in my eyes. Any story of a separated mother and daughter can get me started these days. That's when Magdalena gave me a real serious look. Like she was grateful to me for understanding. But then the gratitude turned into something else. She came forward like she was going to tell me a secret and brushed her lips to mine. I pulled back, shocked. Magdalena, I said, I'm not that way, you know. She laughed. Girl, I don't know what you mean by that way, like it's a wrong turn or something. My body happens to also love the people my heart loves. Well, it made sense the way she said that. Still, I felt really uncomfortable in my narrow bunk, and I wanted her knee touching my knee not to mean anything, but it did. I wanted her to leave, but I didn't want to hurt her feelings. Thank goodness she got the hint and went on with the rest of her story. Quiet time is over, and Minerva's hollering for us to all come to do exercises. I'll finish this tonight. Later. The rest of the story is that Magdalena tried to get Amantina back. One night she stole into the De La Torres house and climbed the same back stairs the young man used to climb down, and she got as far as the upstairs hall, where she was caught by the Doña coming out of her bedroom in her nightdress. Magdalena demanded her child back and pulled out a knife to show that she meant business. Instead of shock, I felt glee. Did you succeed? What do you think I'm doing here, she said. I got 20 years for attempted murder. When I get out, she continued, my little girl will be my age when I came in. Then Magdalena began to cry like her tears were spilling out of her broken heart. I didn't even think about her kissing me earlier. I just reached out and took her in my arms like Mama always does me. Saturday afternoon, July 23rd. Leandro is finally here with us. El Rayo says that he's in Pavilion B with Manolo and Pedrito and the rest of the Central Committee. Also, the ridiculous book is out, Compla del Valdo. No one here has seen it, but we've heard it's an album of all of our photographs with a description of how the movement got started. Nothing that hadn't been in the papers for months already. I hope all those who wagged their tongues feel ashamed of themselves. Wednesday evening, August 3rd. We got real chicken and rice tonight. Minerva and Sina have been talking strategy to me since the news was announced this morning. It's as final as anything can be around here. The OAS Peace Committee comes this Friday. Only one prisoner from each pavilion will be interviewed. The head guards were given the choice, and they picked me. Minerva says it's because they don't think I'll complain. And you have to, she says. You have to, Mate. But they haven't done anything, I protest. They're victims too, like you say. But victims that can do a lot of harm. And this isn't personal, Mate, she adds. This is principle. I never was good at understanding that difference so crucial to my sister. Everything's personal to me. That's principle to her, it seems. We've heard that the interviews won't be supervised, but that doesn't mean a thing here. The hall will be bugged. The secret microphones, no doubt. It will be suicide to talk openly. So Minerva and Sina have written up a statement that I must somehow slip to the committee, signed by the 14th of June movement. There is something else, Minerva says, looking down at her hands. We need someone to write a personal statement. What about what Sina went through, I say? Have Sina write up something. It's not the same, please, Mate. You don't even have to write it up, she adds. We can just tear out the pages in your journal and put them in with our statement. There are other considerations, I tell her. What about Santiclo? If the statements are traced to me, he'll be shot. Minerva holds me by the arms. Revolution is not always pretty, Mate. Look at what they did to Leandro, to Manolo, what they did to Florentino, to Papaline, to you, for God's sakes. It won't stop unless we stop it. Besides, those are just rumors about the guerrillas being shot. I'll see, I say at last. I'll see. Ay, Mate, promise me, she says, looking me in the eyes. Please promise me. So I say to her the only thing I can say. I promise you this. I'll be true to what I think is right. Minerva has never heard such talk from me. Fair enough, she says. Fair enough. Saturday, August 6th. Minerva has asked me a dozen times what happened. A dozen times I've told her the others the story. Rather, I've tried to keep up with their questions. How many members were in the committee? 7 in all, though 2 looked like they were there just to translate. Where was the session? In the visitors' hall. That's why we didn't have visiting hours Thursday. The authorities spared themselves the trouble of having to bug a new place. How long was my session? 10 minutes, though I waited 2 hours outside the door with a very nervous Santiclo. Then, most importantly, did I get a chance to slip the papers to the member of the committee. Yes, I did. And when I was leaving, a serious young man came forward to thank me and lead me out. He spoke very polite, pretty Spanish, probably Venezuelan or maybe Paraguayan, but the way he was looking me over, I could tell he wanted a closer look, checking for scars or skin pallor, something. I had given La Victoria a good report and said that I had been treated fairly, what everyone else from the other cells had probably told them as well. Just as he was turning away, I loosened my braid and let the first folded note fall on the floor. When he saw it, he seemed surprised and went to pick it up, but then he thought better of it and kicked it under the table instead. He gave me this pointed look, and I returned him a slight nod. Santiclo met me right outside the door. His jolly round face looked so afraid. As he was walking me back down the corridor, he wanted to know how it went. Don't worry, I said, and I smiled at him. It was actually his blue ribbon that I had used to hold both notes twisted in my braid. I unwound the ribbon just enough so the first note, with the statement Minerva and Sina had drafted, slipped out. It was signed the 14th of June movement, so it can't be traced to any one cell. And what are they going to do, shoot all the prison guards? The second note with my story was lodged further up in my braid. Maybe it was the sight of that ribbon Santiclo had given me when I was so broken, I don't know. But right then and there, I decided not to drop the second note. I just couldn't take a chance and hurt my friend. And as far as Minerva is concerned, I kept my promise to her. I did what I thought was right. But I think I'll wait until sometime in the future to tell her exactly what that was. Sunday afternoon, August 7th. We're having a little party later. We have been told to be ready for our release tomorrow. None of the men are being freed, though, only the women. Gallantry to impress the OAS is what Minerva guesses. I was so afraid she was going to get high-minded on me again, but she's agreed to go since this is not a pardon, but a release. I think Minerva is close to her own breaking point. She has been acting funny. Sometimes she just turns to me and says, "What?" as if I had asked her something. Sometimes her hand goes to her chest as if she's making sure that she has a heartbeat. I'm glad we will be soon out of here. What hurts is thinking of those I'm leaving behind. Every time I look at Magdalena, I have to look away. I've learned so much from you, I tell her. This has been the most meaningful experience of my whole life, I tell her. I'm going to start crying before the party even starts. Late night. The moonlight is streaming in through our little window, and I can't sleep. I'm sitting up in my bunk writing my last entry in the little space left and sobbing in the quiet way you learn in prison so that you don't add to anyone else's grief. I feel sad to be leaving. Yes, strange as it sounds, this has become my home, and these girls are like my sisters, and I can't imagine the lonely privacy of living without them. I tell myself the connection will continue. It doesn't go away because you leave, and I begin to understand that the revolution in a new way. At our farewell party, I took a chance that Dinora might report me and had all of them sign my book like an autograph book. Some of them I taught how to write their names, so this is a real memento of my time here. As for the book itself, Santiklo is going to smuggle it out for me. We will be inspected thoroughly, I'm sure, when we leave. Then we passed around our little hoard of sugar cubes and crackers and peanuts, and I had a couple of bars of chocolates left, and I cut those in thin slices. Even Dinora added some guava paste that she'd been hoarding. Then we looked at each other, and there was such a sad, heartfelt feeling among us. Minerva started to say something, but she couldn't get it out. So we just held each other, and one by one, we wished each other well, and then goodbye. For the OAS Committee investigating human rights abuses, this is a journal entry of what occurred at La Forti on Monday, April 11th, 1960, to me, a female political prisoner. I'm rather not put my name. Also, I've blotted out some names as I am afraid of getting innocent people in trouble. Please don't put it in the papers either, as I am concerned for my privacy. When they came for me this morning, I thought that maybe I was being taken to the officers' lounge for questioning, but instead Bloody Juan escorted me down the stairs and outside, and there was a wagon waiting. It took me only a minute to realize where we were going. I kept looking out the window hoping I'd be seen by someone who might recognize me and tell my family that they had spotted me in a police wagon headed towards La Forti. How strange that the sun was shining so innocently, that people were walking around as if there were no such thing in the world as poor souls in my predicament. I tried getting some explanation as to why I was being taken in, but to Bloody Juan is not one to explain things. By the time we got to La Forti, I was shaking so bad I couldn't get out of the wagon. I felt ashamed that they had to carry me in like a sack of beans. There was a bunch of them already waiting in the interrogation room, tall, fat Johnny and his Hitler mustache, and the one called Concedo with the curly hair, and the bug-eyed one that kept cracking his knuckles to make the sound of breaking bones. They stripped me down to my slip and brassiere and made me lie down on this long metal table, but they didn't buckle the belts I saw dangling down the sides. I had never known such terror. My chest was so tight I could barely breathe. Johnny said, "Hey, pretty lady, don't get all excited. We're not going to hurt you," the one called Concedo said. That made me shake all the more. When the door opened and Blank was brought in, I didn't immediately recognize him. A walking skeleton, that's what he looked like, shirtless, his back covered with blisters the size of dimes. I sprang up, but Bloody Juan pushed me back down on the table. "You lie down nice like you're in bed waiting for him," Bug-Eye said. Then he said something gross about what torture does to the necessary organ. Johnny told him to shut up. "What do you want with her?" Blank shouted. I could tell he was scared. "We want her to help us persuade you," Johnny said in a voice that was too calm and rational for this eerie place. "She has nothing to do with this," Blank cried. "Are you saying that you've reconsidered?" Johnny asked. But Blank stood his ground. "I'm not discussing the matter further until you let her go." That's when Bug-Eye slammed him with a fist, knocking him down. How dare scum dictate terms to the captain? Then all of them joined in kicking Blank until he was writhing in agony on the floor, and I was screaming for them to stop, and it felt like my very own stomach was being punched, and that's when the pains, as bad as contractions, began. Then Johnny asked me if I couldn't persuade Blank. After all, Blank, 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 and Blank had all reconsidered. I was so tempted to say, "I, Blank, save yourself and save us," but I couldn't. It was as if he would have been the real way to let them kill us. So I told those monsters that I would never ask Blank to go against what his conscience told him was right. "Two of a kind," the one called Candido said. "We'll have to use stronger persuasions." "I guess," Johnny said. "Tie her down." Bug-Eye stood before me, holding a rod with a little switch. When he touched me with it, my whole body jumped with exquisite pain, and I felt my spirit snapping loose and soaring above my body and looking down at the scene. I was about to float off in a haze of brightness when Blank cried out, "I'll do it! I'll do it!" And down I went, sucked back into the body like water down a drain. Next thing I knew, Blank was calling out my name and shouting, "Tell them I had to do it," and he was being dragged away. Johnny seemed in a bad mood at all this commotion. "Get him out of here," he said, and then to Bloody Juan, "Get her dressed and take her back." I was left alone in that room with a handful of guards, and I could tell they were all ashamed of themselves, avoiding my eyes, quiet, as if Johnny were still there. Then Bloody Juan gathered up my clothes, but I wouldn't let him help me. I dressed myself and walked out to the wagon on my own 2 feet.